This does not mean that individuals that are harmonious with the universe are good in and of themselves, or that their methods or motives are good, merely that universe wants them to do what they're doing at that moment. And this is the same kind of thing that we have to acknowledge occurs on the other side. So the powers that be work their butts off for probably the better part of 30 years to engineer that a certain individual by the name of Adolf would rise to the chancellery of Germany at a particular time, because they were attempting to get an individual to harmonize with the universe. Didn't quite work. And so he wasn't as harmonious as they thought. They thought they were on top of a particular trend and they were riding a wave. They misjudged it. The wave crested and broke and they came crashing down, although they were not defeated. And they try it again and so on. They are afraid of the rise of the mule in the Asimov language, the David Icke and the Gandhi, the individual that is able to harmonize for reasons that they are not able to understand. Either the individual that's doing the harmonizing usually isn't necessarily aware of what they're doing, but also the powers that be don't know why such individuals arise, and they're very much sketched out by it. Interesting bit of diversion. There's the Hindu religion has an offshoot with the Jain religion, and both of these religions are not really given to prophecy, but the ones they have are really interesting. And the Jain have this offshoot, this particular fellow that was a companion of one of their enlightened beings who wrote down some of the things the enlightened beings said. And we can take it as prophecy, if you will. And the Jain description that I read years ago was about the end of the Kali Yuga. And what it said was that for each and every aspect of universe, there would be 9 individuals that would arise. And there's 66,000 aspects of universe, so that's what, 594,000 individuals would arise that would be the expressors of these aspects. And of the 9 individuals for each aspect, 8 of them would perish during the Kali Yuga, and one of those individuals would be the carryover to take the rest of the planet, if you will, into the next age, and to be the seed. So the 9 is reduced by 8 to 1. Now, there's a whole lot of 981 issues there relative to sacred geometry and numbers and so on, and you can make the claim that the whole myth was merely to encode these numbers and their relationship. Nonetheless, a lot of the prophetic description that goes along with that that's in that book describes individuals that are wittingly or not harmonious with universe and end up, oh, well, I got to do it. Universe wants me to do it. I'll just shut up and do it. And, I'm going to end up having to be a big fool and everybody's going to laugh at me and, maybe I'll be vilified or whatever, but this is just the chore the universe has presented us with. David Icke is such an individual. And I know this not from my own personal understanding, but from the linguistics as to how the people are discussing him at the minion level and above. And I can find exactly the same language replicated in the idiom of its day from the powers that be about Gandhi.
Wow.
Just an interesting little aside. Yeah.
So
the powers that be think Ike is in tune with universe and they're afraid to touch him. They're going to annoy the crap out of him, but I don't think they'll ever assassinate him.
Well, good. So in being in tune with the universe, I'm kind of feeling like that you be in tune with the universe with your gut versus with your mind.
There's no difference. Let's recognize that we have brain cells around our gut, around our intestines. We have as much neural mass around our intestines as we do in the thinking cortex of our brain. It is literally your second brain. Your intuition resides down there. It thinks in a different way, but it is your mind.
Okay, because I heard David Icke say that he had tremendous freedom once he stopped caring what anyone thought about him.
I have also reached that stage through a similar set of suffering that I encountered in my youth. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's true. That's true. Once you break through the paternalistic constraints and impositions that are placed on you by the outside, a huge amount of freedom comes rushing at you. And then the next thing that comes rushing at you is the overwhelming horror of the responsibility you now have. And it takes you a number of years just to chew that and digest it all, the responsibility thing. And regardless of what anybody may say about Ike, his motives, or anything like that, this is an individual that has gone through both of those phases. And so he's had at least that same level of the enlightenment experience that I've had. I think he's gone further had more of such experiences. But we at least share that. So I know that he is at least as harmonious as possible with the universe at that level. Universe is, he's a, what do they call him? Shiva's dog, Shiva's dogs. He's he's a good Shiva's dog, as I am.
Okay. Then we coming to our last question, and this is about the new energies and lights.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Paul Muir, but
Yes.
you said
Yeah.
okay, good. Because you said in your last report that humans are reacting to photonic light inputs. And Paul Muir has said that in the past that a star in Taurus turned supernova around 3100 BC, and that our planet received particles and photons which acted on our magnetic field from that event. That the light from the event caused people to see a second sun around 1054. He states that due to the weakening of the heliosphere, we are now getting more particles and protons from space, causing the current increase in the Earth's rotational speed. He also thinks that due to the cyclic nature of the universe, that there could be a similar event from Betelgeuse or Orion or the Crab Nebula Taurus, thus recharging the Earth's magnetic field. His research provides evidence which suggests that in the past, when the planet's magnetic field was stronger, people were able to see and feel and work with energy. Do any of these ideas line up with what you've gathered about the photonic light meme?
They do to some degree. Let's just say about half. About half of the ideas are within the language that's being expressed. I would also agree that in a stronger magnetic field, a different set of physical reality constraints are possible. In a stronger magnetic field, we may find that sound actually could be used to transport material goods because the sound could be magnetically controlled and so on. So that I do find credible. I have no way of validating whether or not, and we don't see anything in the data suggesting the name of any star as being a potential source for this, or a supernova eruption, or even specific energy types. Because you have to understand that even if he were 100% correct, we would never be able to tell from our data. At most, we would just be able to get, as we are now, a vague hint that some of his language has shown up. The reason being that we are getting our reports of the photonics and the lights and new light energy and to that extent the new electrics and everything out of the Space Ghost Farts entity, which is masked at its archetype level by the unknown and the officially denied. And the officially denied archetype context is so large that it has a tendency to obscure a lot. Now, you have to understand that within our data set, when I see in model space, I go to the Space Go Farts entity, and I've got it shaded in shades of green at the moment. And so I go and I look at it, and it's got some very intense, bright international safety green areas, the highlighted intense areas that I want to go and look at. Some of these areas are pitted. They have little holes in them that when you look at the actual data, and those holes are really filled with the word unknown. And it is a method that we have devised for those words we have yet to invent or appropriately categorize. And it basically allows the data to present us with an unknown set of contexts and some detail from which we could theoretically deduce some nature of the context and then make an interpretation from. So Paul may be 100% correct, but I would never get enough data to validate any of the details. At best, I'm going to get, as I've got now, these vague suggestions that somehow light is going to be interacting with humans and causing us to noticeably react with it. And it may be some humans, it may be all humans. We can't even tell that. So that's unfortunately the best I can do. If it were in some other entity, we might have a whole lot more data. It's just that we actually built the Space Go Farts entity around the idea of the unknown and the officially denied. Now, let me be real clear about this as well, though, and state that the photonics thing has more officially denied contexts than it does unknown. And I use that as a personal tell, if you will, that there's a lot of black ops kind of secret civilization stuff going on within this, simply because in the past that has proved to be a reasonable supposition.
So does that mean that photonics is unknown energies from space, or it's scalar weapon stuff?
The scalar weapons is a subset of the unknown energies from space, as is the photonics. They are at an equal level. There are words that they share in common, but it does not mean that there's a common causal effect. In other words, scalar weapons frequently involve the same kind of science that is used to discuss photonic energies coming from the sun, because they operate at a scalar level. And so since that same science language is in both places, we can't really tell. Sort of makes sense?
So we're just getting in a new paradigm of understanding about...
I would agree with that, except that we do have some language that's in the immediacy values that shade into the shorter term that suggests that there's an actual transition, not necessarily an event, but is certainly an aha moment relative to something that has recently occurred. The occurred part is, let me back up and I'll give you a real key element of our understanding of data in the lexicon here that will absolutely drive our competitors nuts, because I don't think I've ever mentioned it before. Our data structure and language is based around the language on the planet that has the most words related to time and most words related to nuance of time. And we took our model of time and how words relate from that language, and this is Latin. And because Latin has this really arcane structure, that all of the arcanity goes to the ability to deal with words relative to time in very fine degree, very surprising detail of degree for societies, for a language that was based on from a society that didn't have watches, didn't have mechanistic understanding of time. Yet these people have words that were even more astutely applied than the Greeks' idea. And the Greeks were very good at understanding time, the nature of it, the flavor versus the mechanistic, and so on. Well, the getting back to the Latins, the Latin have the idea of a perfect declension. A perfect is a already actively completed that can be described in the words having occurred or having happened. So it's an active past tense. We have that active past tense encoded in our data and how we look at words, and that's what we're looking at in the upcoming transition. It's not merely a recognition of something that is out and about, like, oh, hey, there's a new plant, we've never seen that plant before, hooray. It's more as though, geez, my eyes are suddenly perceiving ultraviolet, now I see there are plants growing in ultraviolet that I've never seen before. And so there's a different thing there. It had occurred that we were suddenly able to see the plant, as opposed to, oh, our consciousness just kind of settled on the plant for the first time. And we have that level of subtle distinction within our language. So there is a transition of some sort that is coming that is associated with the photonics. This is why I would tend to think that it's much more like Paul's description of, the magnetosphere being changed such that tweaks how our brains work, as opposed to us just having the sudden realization that, the speed of light is not constant, something like that.
Wow, thank you. I'm always more intrigued with the universe after talking to you.
Well, I once had a guy say that, your head is just a big hole that leaks out in the universe, and I don't think he was wrong.
But a good time is had by all. Thank
there
you
go.
so much.
There you go.
It may be a hole. Clif, as a final question, as we approach the year 2012, year of transition and the period when monuments will be built for humans, is there anything you would like to tell us or add to this interview?